All know Secretary of Administration Jeb Spalding. You probably, maybe you don't all know, but I bet many of you do. Lee Seddon is here from Alteris, who installs solar energy projects, and Andy Persilick is here as well from the Clean Energy Development Fund, and thank them all for joining us. I'm pleased to announce that we have a proposal that will get money into the Clean Energy Fund so that we can continue to build and expand renewable energy projects in Vermont without raising 55 cents a month on Vermonters' electric bills at a time when Vermonters are hard-pressed to pay their bills, afford $4 a gallon gas. And let's not forget, my challenge as governor is the simple fact that Vermonters on average are making the same money they were making 10 years ago, and their bills have gone up. So as you know, whether it's not raising taxes or not raising electric bills, my goal is to try allow them to raise incomes without raising their monthly costs. The plan's a pretty simple one, and I came to this plan after a call from All Earth Renewables making a suggestion that we might pursue this idea. And I asked my Secretary of Administration to call other people who had been granted credits in the program already, talk to the Tax Department, the Department of Public Service, and others to vet the idea. And here's the idea very simply. Currently, the federal government gives you $1 cash from Treasury for tax credits that go to renewable projects. What we're proposing instead is that we give a 50-cent cash payment once the project has been completed for anyone who has been granted a solar tax credit so far. In exchange for that, you would get 50% of what you would have gotten, but in a form of cash instead of being spread out over a 5-year tax credit period. And that will allow us to free up more dollars or recycle more dollars directly into the fund to allocate for new renewable energy projects. How's the math work? We gave out $8.5 million worth of credits to 93 projects that will go to 23 different businesses across Vermont last year, or the last several years. This will free up between $2.7 and $3 million by our estimates from people who have already been granted credits in the program, but who would rather have 50% of the cash rather than the tax credits spread over 5 years. So it's a win-win for ratepayers because they won't see their rates go up 55 cents a month. It's a win-win for the developers because they'll get cash up front. And it's a win-win for the Clean Energy Development Fund because it gives us more dollars, roughly $3 million, to recycle and grant to other projects that are both that are desperately needed. Let's put it that way. So that's the plan. I told you it wasn't complicated. We think it's an example of government being smart, keeping electric rates low, and spurring and promoting the need for Vermont to move to a renewable energy portfolio as quickly as possible. I'd like to turn it over to the Secretary of Administration, who's helped vet these ideas, and then let Lee say a few words, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might wish to ask.
Thank you very much, Governor. I think you said it well. It's a pretty simple, straightforward proposition. As you all know, we're in the process of updating the state energy plan, and a lot of work and importance is going into that plan, and there will be a long-term sustainable funding mechanism for the Clean Energy Development Fund as part of the state energy plan. The bill that went through the House was a temporary 55 cents a month surcharge, raised about $2.3 million. As the governor recommended, this simple proposal we have here in a much quicker time frame will provide, our estimate is between $2.7 and $3 million. So we get more money in a quicker time frame and don't raise taxpayers' electric bills. When the idea was proposed, it seemed like a good idea. It actually was part of a package that included some other aspects that might be of interest to other renewable energy investors. And when the governor asked me to look into it, we assembled not just the tax department, the public service department, but the finance and management department and tried to vet it. I personally made calls to other investors that had solar tax credits to see if this might work for them. It does for many. It doesn't for some. I think it's okay to say, I think, for example, Green Mountain Power, who had a solar tax credit, will continue with their tax credit. But there are enough people that would be happy to take 50 cents on the dollar to get the cash up front at the time the project is complete and commissioned, that we can redirect close to $3 million to renewable energy projects. And as a matter of fact, I think the governor was going to introduce Lee Seddon, who is a solar installer and entrepreneur that is working with a project in Bennington County that's going to, I think, be benefited by this proposal.
So we'll turn it over to Lee Seddon, and Lee, of course, is running a company that's working on a panel project. So Lee, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Governor. I'm Vice President of Alteris Renewables. We are the engineers and contractors trying to develop the Pownell 2-megawatt solar plant. Our financing partners in this is EOS Ventures, and we basically have a $900,000 Vermont tax credit that we have been certified for. And when this proposal came to us from the administration, would you accept $450,000 instead of the $900,000 tax credit, so you could get it this year when we want to build the plant, not over 5 years? The investment people, EOS Ventures, said that works for us. Financially, that works for us to have the cash up front and the certainty, and we will go along with it. So, as Jeb Spalding indicated, of the developers that have certified state tax credits right now, at least 2.7 million of those tax credits, those developers are willing to go to the 50% cash grant. And for us in the Pownell plant, we've been working 2 years to try to get this developed. It's a very tough financial situation out there to get financiers in. We have our certificate of public good. We're ready to build, but we need to have the certainty for the financial investors so we can start this year. And for us, this proposal does it, so I really think it's a win-win for these projects and also the Clean Energy Development Fund. So thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Lee. Appreciate it. Be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
It's just to run it through one more time. It's a state tax credit that people would get the cash value of half in advance rather than spread out over 5 years.
Exactly. It's
So
that simple.
It's not a federal tax credit.
No,
that's a separate.
Right. But it is modeled on the federal program. Currently, if you get a federal tax credit, you have a choice. You can take it as a tax credit, or the Treasury will send you a check, $1 for $1. This slightly modified plan is 50 cents for $1's worth of credit.
So this money that was going toward these tax credits up until very recently was already sitting in the fund?
That's correct.
And so it doesn't make any difference in terms of not having to pay out over the 5 years?
Right. This is one of those few examples in life where if you bring business practices to state government, everybody wins. And as a business person, I understand the value of cash. So do a lot of these developers. But this is a way for us to take the limited resources we have in the Clean Energy Development Fund and ask this simple question: how can we recycle those dollars and get a bigger bang for our buck and ensure that we don't have to raise rates on electric ratepayers?
It's optional.
It's optional.
And you've vetted it with all of them?
I'll let Jeb's
Okay.
Secretary of Administration
Well,
speak.
and we do have Andy Perchlik from Clean Energy Development Fund, so if I say anything wrong, you just pipe right up at him. But he's here just for the facts, and he did a lot of the legwork on this. I don't know, I think we have not heard from every one of the developers. If I got it right, it was 92 projects by 23 investors.
That's right.
So there's a lot of
93.
people out there, and that's one of the reasons why we couldn't just give you the answer when we wanted to last week. And it's another issue on the timing of this thing. The idea came along, we had to run it down to make sure it worked and not get out ahead of it. It turns out it does work. And to answer David's question, most of the money is in the fund now. There still is additional funds coming in, but since these credits are a hard commitment, we couldn't spend the money on anything else. So, we're actually estimating on Andy's cash flow that instead of starting a 55-cent a month charge on people's electric bills in July and having it come in a little bit every month, we should be able to redirect this money this coming August in September at the latest. So we're going to get the money out the door, or can get the money out the door a lot quicker. One other thing just to mention, just to clarify, John, your question. This is the Vermont credit. So as Lee said, they had a $900 commitment for a credit. They're going to take $450,000 up front, and that works for them. You can see why, as the governor mentioned. There is a side benefit for investors such as them. The governor mentioned the option at the federal level for the federal tax credit. You can get 100% of the credit value in a grant, and that was a limited time offer as part of the federal stimulus. That expires this year. Since this will now be a grant, Vermont's credit, the way the law is, you can only, if you take the Vermont credit, you can only get the federal credit, not the grant. This will actually allow those people to actually get the federal grant at 100% of their credit level. I don't know if you understand. I hope that was English, but there's an extra advantage for these folks that
After the end of the year? Is that right?
I think it has to happen this year.
Right.
How much would you have been able to raise with that money that was sitting in that fund otherwise, and what would you have done with it?
You lost me.
You've got a bank account.
Right, 8.5 million.
That was going to generate X amount of revenue over the next 5 years as you disperse these credits. I'm wondering how much money was that going to yield, and how are you planning to use that money that you would presumably no longer have?
You mean if we'd invested the funds while we waited?
Correct.
You know, it's a negligible amount of money, frankly, because the return on investment at this time is so low that we are much better off giving out half as much money as we promised and getting cash to the investors.
How many of them have agreed to it? You must know.
Well, the Secretary of Administration has done some work on that, and what we're telling you is that based upon our research, we believe that we will get between $2.7 and $3 million into the fund. I just want to remind you the 55-cent surcharge raised $2.3 million for 1 year. So we think our proposal in the end will yield more dollars into the fund than the 55-cent
Can you
surcharge.
get that from a couple of them? I mean, how many?
Well,
Who
there's
said yes?
A couple of things. It would take more than a couple to get the whole amount. Andy's done more of the outreach. And some of these developers are working with multiple projects. So they've got, like maybe 20 projects. So the number of projects involved with this will be, I don't know how many, but quite a few. And I haven't spoken to Andy this morning anymore to know whether, I think at the last I thought there were 3 that were definitely committed. I don't know if that's more or not. Right. So we're still advocating. And there are others that are saying maybe I gotta run it, run it through the accountants and make sure we want to do this. So again, we wanted to not go out with this till we were sure we had at least enough commitments to make sure that this was going to be a viable alternative.
But do you have at least enough commitments?
Absolutely,
to raise
yes.
the 2.6?
Yes.
You have enough people signed on.
Is that correct, Andy?
Yeah.
And is all those others?
I don't think, we want to be a little careful about commenting or committing for people that haven't necessarily signed our bottom line. You can check with the recipients. As you know, All Earth is one of them. There's public knowledge of who these folks are, but we wouldn't be standing here telling you we think we've got it if we didn't think we did.
And is the 55-cent fee or surcharge, is that off the table as far as you're concerned?
Well, can I just comment on a little bit of the revisionist history that I've read the last few days on the 55-cent fee? First of all, I read that it was my idea. That's very kind and charitable. The fact of the matter is it was not my idea. This was a bill introduced by Vermont Public Interest Research Group last year. It was taken up by the Natural Resources Committee this year. 6 weeks ago, I called the chair in when they were talking about a higher rate and expressed my concern about this form of financing. I'm not saying no to it. I'm saying it should be a last resort to raise electric rates on Vermonters. So just to get that bit of history set straight. The answer is, I don't think we should raise taxes on hardworking Vermonters or raise electric rates on hardworking Vermonters unless we absolutely have to. And I'm putting forward today a proposal that suggests we don't have to. So this is good news. Cheer up, celebrate. We got a good idea.
So ultimately,